An island off the coast of southeast Alaska. It's called St. Lazaria, after a saint of the Russian Orthodox Church. Alaska was once Russian territory. It's quite small, only 1,000 meters from end to end, and its rocky shores make it difficult to land on. No people live here, but in summer it's home to more than 500,000 birds. Spring comes late to Alaska, and it's May before tufted puffins come ashore to lay their eggs. Some 11,000 of these punk-plumed puffins breed on St. Lazaria. Like our own Atlantic puffin, these Pacific puffins nest in burrows on the grassy slopes above the cliffs. In Britain, puffins sometimes take over rabbit holes, but there are no rabbits here, so the puffins must burrow their own homes. The same holes are used year after year. One of the first tasks of the newly arrived pairs is to collect material for the simple nest. Despite all the energy that goes into gathering these leaves, hardly any of them will be taken into the burrow. Perhaps collecting grass is a vestige of the time when puffins made proper nests, or perhaps grass and twigs are a suitable gift to impress a mate, the puffin equivalent, you might say, of a bunch of flowers. Tufted puffins are by no means the only kind of seabird to come to the island. It's a varied place, and there's ground here to suit many tastes. Glaucous-winged gulls nest on the grassy crests of cliffs and pinnacles. Kittiwakes, fishing in the sea near the island, use its cliffs as a resting place. Tidal pools in the low centre of the island yield food for other birds. Sandpipers and black oyster catchers probing for a meal. Crevices in the rocks provide nest sites for pigeon guillemots. And on the steep cliffs facing the Gulf of Alaska, common and thick-billed guillemots line the ledges. Exposed to the full force of storms surging in from the Pacific, they perch precariously, cradling their single eggs between their feet. In all, 10 kinds of seabird breed on St. Lazaria, and that makes it a magnet for scavengers and predators. The bald eagle, the national bird of America. Alaska is one of the few areas that still support good numbers. Most years, 1 or 2 pairs of these powerful birds nest on the island, supplementing their normal diet of fish by plundering the colonies of seabirds, and even snatching unsuspecting puffins from the surface of the sea. An Indian legend maintains that St. Lazaria was born in fire, cast from the throat of a volcano just across the sea. Geologists agree that these rocks are indeed volcanic, the result, they say, of an upwelling of lava some 40,000 years ago. The lava cooled and the sea sought out lines of weakness in the rock, carving it into strange arches and pinnacles. Caverns run deep into the cliffs. Where their mouths open below high water mark, they form blowholes. Waves surging in compress the air trapped within the cave. Until the pressure builds and it blasts its way out. Even in midsummer, huge waves beat upon St. Lazaria's exposed shore. They may have traveled hundreds of kilometers from some distant storm center in the Pacific, and often they sweep right across the outer barriers of rock, flooding the low center of the island. But the water in one pool rises mysteriously with the tide, even on a calm day. And even though a rock barrier completely separates it from the sea outside. Sometimes a seal appears from the limpid depths of the pool, as if from nowhere. There is clearly some hidden link with the sea, some channel through which water and the seal can enter. In the center of the pool, a narrow shaft leads straight down, perhaps following the line of some ancient outpouring of molten rock. "15 fathoms down, it turns and becomes a horizontal gallery. Incredibly, in what is normally total darkness, the walls of this submarine passage are encrusted with brilliantly colored corals. The fissure leads on into the darkness, not straight to the sea, but towards the center of the island. It's never been followed to the other end, but it must ultimately run to the open sea. Wolf eels and tiger rockfish usually live on the deep reefs around St. Lazaria. It may be the search for such fish that draws seals into this submarine tunnel. On the cliffs above the pool, the puffins are now well established. By June, most burrows will have a single egg. While one partner incubates, the other is free to fly out to sea to feed. Some days the colony seems almost deserted. On others, there's a constant coming and going. This tapping of bills is part of puffin courtship. All the breeding birds in the colony will have found a mate weeks before, but they still bill tap with their partners. This continuing courtship seems to strengthen the bonds between them. Bill-tapping pairs often attract onlookers. Although the burrows are packed close together, puffins are territorial. Each pair defends a small area around the hole. This yawning is a kind of threat, warning off an intruder. If intimidation fails, they may come to blows. Tufted puffins account for only a tiny proportion of St. Lazaria's breeding birds. Most of the others are found not on the cliffs or the grassy headlands, but in the small patches of forest that crown the ends of the island. The trees are Sitka spruce. Some may have survived the storms of 3 centuries. They're watered by 2.5 meters of rain a year. That's enough to cover a tall man. Like the jungle of the Amazon, this is a rainforest. Not a tropical, but a temperate one. During the day, the forest seems almost deserted. Most of its inhabitants are hidden or absent. Only in the brief Arctic night does it come alive. In a honeycomb of burrows beneath the trees, something is stirring. from far out to sea, there comes a winged invasion. Storm petrels. They're called petrels after St. Peter, who, the Bible says, once tried to walk on water. For petrels often flutter and patter with their feet as they feed on the surface of the sea. Many of these frail birds have flown hundreds of kilometers to reach the island. They must time their arrival for the short hours of darkness, for only then are they safe. An estimated 540,000 petrels nest on St. Lazaria. They congregate here because very few islands are free of ground-based predators such as rats or mink and have soil that is soft enough to burrow into. They dig tunnels the length of a man's arm. Like the puffins, they use their nest holes again year after year. Two kinds of petrel nest on the island. This is the fork-tailed petrel. The other one's called Leach's petrel. They're about the size of a blackbird. All petrels have a prominent nostril on the upper part of their beak. They're unusual among birds in having an acute sense of smell. This may help them find food on the surface of the ocean, and it's been shown that petrels locate their own burrows at least partly by smell, though if their mate is at home, the partner may identify it by its calls. Petrels lay only one egg. A forktail's egg takes an incredible 7 weeks to hatch, longer than almost any other birds. Petrels feed far out to sea, and the egg is often abandoned for days at a time. There's only the scantiest nesting material to raise it off the cold, damp ground, and it can survive a drop in temperature that would kill most eggs. An egg has been known to hatch after 71 days, for 31 of which it was unattended. With the parents away so much, the chick may struggle into the world alone. A chick can survive being chilled, but its chances of life are greater if it's brooded for the first few days. It can't generate its own internal warmth until it's 4 days old. Petrels aren't the only burrow-nesting birds in the forest. This is a rhinoceros auklet, so called from the strange growth on its bill. It's a kind of secretive nocturnal puffin. About 2,000 of these birds nest on the island. During the day, they remain offshore. Only at night do they bring fish for their young, which are waiting hungrily in the burrows. Petrels don't feed their chicks on fish. They eat tiny shrimps and squid, which they catch far from the island in the sea beyond the continental shelf. Instead of bringing them back whole, they store the natural oils derived from their prey in their stomachs and regurgitate it when they return to the nest. Visits to the open ocean take the parents away for 2 to 3 days at a stretch, so it's not often that both are in the nest hole together. This pair may not have seen one another for many days. Their chick hatched only hours ago. The returning parent hasn't yet seen what's become of the egg, which it's been helping to incubate for the last 7 weeks. It will be some 60 days before the chick leaves the nest. For much of that time, it will be left on its own. This chick was abandoned within 2 days of hatching. It's able to conserve its energy by greatly slowing down its heartbeat and respiration. But these early days are nonetheless critical. Four days later, one parent returns to deliver its cargo of oil. While its parents were away, the chick has actually managed to grow using the remnant of the yolk still within its body. Now, with this feed of energy-rich oil, its chances of survival are good. Petrels that don't remain in the burrows must be clear of the island before dawn. Their sole defense is to spit sticky, foul-smelling oil over an attacker, and that would hardly deter a stooping eagle or a peregrine. A feeding frenzy of gulls greets the sunrise. Beneath them swim vast shoals of sand lance. For the seabirds, these teeming finger-length fish are one of the great riches of the Gulf of Alaska. They're eaten by almost every kind of bird. Only in the submarine forests of kelp are they relatively secure. This bull kelp is an annual plant. In the spring, its stalks grow several meters in a few weeks. At the top of each, a gas-filled bladder develops, which holds up the frond near the surface in the sunlight. On the sea floor, far below, the kelp has an enemy. Sea urchins graze on the stems that anchor the kelp to the seabed. They sever the stalks, and the rest of the plant drifts away, perhaps to sink and be eaten by other urchins on some distant reef. But the sea urchins have an enemy too, the sea otter. A few years ago, there were no sea otters here. They were wiped out in the last century by Russian fur traders based in nearby Sitka, or New Archangel, as this capital of Russian America was called. But recently, sea otters were reintroduced, and their numbers are now increasing. More sea otters mean fewer sea urchins. Fewer sea urchins mean more kelp, and more kelp may mean more little fishes for the puffins to eat. It's now August, and the tufted puffin chicks have hatched. A constant stream of parent birds bring beakloads of sandlance for their young. Puffins can dive down to 60 meters below the surface in pursuit of fish. They don't deliver the fish right to the chicks' beaks. They just dump them in the burrow, or sometimes even at the entrance, and leave the chick to pick them up for itself. Each load may be several small fishes and squid, all neatly aligned in the beak. So how do puffins collect this mouthful? It's thought that the puffin holds the first fish it catches against the upper part of its beak with its tongue, and then uses the lower mandible to catch more. For the time being, the puffin chick is well fed, but in a few weeks its parents will desert it and it will make its first journey out to sea alone. By November, the puffins and the petrels will have left, and the island will be deserted except for families of seals playing around its shores, until once again, in spring, it will provide a home for 500,000 birds.